Shine a light on. Shine a light on. Barometer. Barometer. Granular view and granular view. Is that fair? Is that fair? Leading indicator. Leading indicator.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're cutting through some of the noise on Wall Street. We're going to shine a light on a really crucial, but maybe often misunderstood, part of the U.S. stock market, the Russell 2000. You shared some excellent sources on this, and our mission today is basically to peel back the layers. We want to understand not just what it is, but, why it acts as such a powerful barometer for the ground level health of the American economy.
Exactly. And the goal here is really to pull out those key insights so you can kind of see past the usual headlines and really grasp the unique story the Russell 2000 tells about where the U.S. economy actually stands.
Okay, so let's unpack that. When most people think U.S. stocks, their minds jump straight to Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, right? The tech giants. They dominate the news. But your sources, they really zeroed in on the Russell 2000 as, well, a completely different animal. So what exactly is this index, and why should we be looking beyond those huge mega caps?
Yeah, that's the key distinction. The Russell 2000, it's an index made up of 2,000 publicly traded small cap companies. They have to be headquartered here in the U.S. And when we say small cap, we're generally talking about companies with market capitalizations, somewhere between maybe $300 million and $2 billion. Roughly.
It's significantly smaller than the giants.
Oh, vastly smaller. And, while some names in there might surprise you, you mentioned Krispy Kreme or Crocs because they're recognized globally. Their actual market size and revenue puts them squarely in this small cap category. They're just not in the same league as the trillion-dollar behemoths. What's really interesting, I think, is that these are often younger companies, maybe more agile, and they tend to be disproportionately focused on domestic markets, U.S. trends.
Right. So it's less about the huge global picture and maybe more about the pulse of, Main Street America.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
And that really brings us to why this specific index is so important then. Unlike the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, which, let's face it, can often be swayed by how just a handful of big tech firms are doing. The Russell 2000 gives us this much broader, more granular view. It really reflects the health of smaller businesses across tons of different industries: retail, healthcare, energy services, manufacturing, you name it.
Precisely. And if we connect that to the bigger picture, these smaller companies, they're just far more sensitive to domestic shifts. Think about interest rate changes from the Fed or shifts in U.S. consumer spending, even local policy stuff.
Why is that? Why are they more sensitive?
Well, smaller businesses often rely more heavily on borrowing money to grow, right? And they might operate with thinner profit margins. So that makes them highly responsive almost immediately to changes in economic conditions here at home. This sensitivity makes the Russell 2000 a really powerful, almost real-time gauge for that ground-level U.S. economy. It can often act as a kind of leading indicator for broader market moves.
That's a powerful difference. Okay, so how does it typically react under different conditions? Like, for instance, the sources noted we've seen it surge sometimes after U.S. elections, right? Fueled by hopes for domestic-focused policies, maybe infrastructure spending or tax changes that might favor local manufacturing or smaller firms generally. It seems tied to the mood within the country. The Russell 2000 really highlights how policy and just domestic sentiment translates into actual economic activity. But the reverse is also true, and maybe even more telling sometimes. Things like fears of recession or stubborn inflation or big shifts in Fed interest rate policy. Those tend to hit these smaller companies first, often hardest.
They don't have those huge cash reserves or that global diversification that the mega caps use to sort of absorb shocks. So, for example, as of early 2025, we saw the Russell 2000 underperforming the NASDAQ. And that reflected this really complex mix of signals. The ongoing impact of higher interest rates making borrowing tough, some slowing growth, persistent inflation concerns. These aren't just abstract economic ideas for these firms. They directly impact their ability to operate, to hire, to expand.
So it's almost like an early warning system for the economy's grassroots.
Yeah.
Okay, so the practical takeaway from all this then, for someone looking at their investments or maybe just trying to understand the market better, is that the Russell 2000 offers this vital, maybe often overlooked perspective.
Right.
It gives you this unique insight into America's small business backbone. It shows you where perhaps genuine innovation is brewing, which sectors might be set for organic growth,
Right.
and how policies are really affecting the day-to-day economy.
Indeed. And it's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that some of the world's most transformative ideas, the most recognized brands, they started small, just like the companies in this index today. So keeping an eye on these smaller players, it offers more than just diversification for investor. It gives you these unique insights into the broader economic landscape. And maybe, just maybe, it helps you spot the hidden trends shaping our future, the ones the larger indices might gloss over. Think of it as tuning into a different frequency to get the real economic signal.